7 signs God is guiding you even when you don't see it. There are moments in life when everything feels uncertain, as though the world is a maze with no clear way out. You've prayed, you've hoped, and yet silence seems to echo back. In such times, it's easy to wonder if God is still listening, still guiding, still there. But what if I told you that the silence isn't absence but preparation? What if the struggles you face are not obstacles but carefully placed stepping stones? Imagine this: you're walking through a dense forest in the dead of night. No light to guide your path, no visible signs of direction. Yet with each hesitant step, you realize you're moving forward, avoiding pitfalls you didn't know were there. What force is at work in those moments? What unseen hand ensures you don't fall too far? Many dismiss these experiences as coincidences, but there are no coincidences in a life lived with faith. God often works in ways we cannot immediately understand, His guidance subtle yet undeniable for those who know how to look. The question is, are you paying attention? Or are you too focused on what you lack to see the gentle hand steering you forward? Today, I want to share 7 unmistakable signs that God is guiding you even when you feel lost. These signs aren't always flashy or dramatic. In fact, they often appear in the quiet moments of life when we least expect them. But make no mistake, each one is a whisper of reassurance from above, a reminder that you are never truly alone. Have you ever experienced a door closing so firmly that you were left wondering why? Or perhaps, out of nowhere, someone crossed your path and changed the entire trajectory of your life. These are not random occurrences. They are clues, divine breadcrumbs leading you to the destiny God has prepared for you. But here's the challenge: God's guidance rarely aligns with our expectations. We look for burning bushes and parted seas, but He speaks in whispers, works through detours, and often sends help in forms we don't recognize. In our impatience, we demand clarity, yet God values the journey over the destination. He desires faith, trust, and a willingness to move even when the way forward seems unclear. I know some of you might be wondering, why would God make His guidance so subtle? Why doesn't He just make everything obvious? The truth is, clarity can breed complacency. But faith is forged in the fire of uncertainty. It's in the waiting, the wondering, and the trusting that we grow. What you're about to hear are 7 signs, subtle yet profound, that God is guiding you right now. These signs are not meant to predict the future, but to remind you of His presence in the present. Each one is a nudge, a divine wink, a quiet affirmation that you are on the right path, even if you can't see the destination yet. So, let's begin. Doors that close firmly and unequivocally. Have you ever stood before a door you were certain was meant to open for you? Perhaps it was a job you thought would change your life, a relationship you believed was destined to last, or a dream you had nurtured for years. You knocked, you prayed, you waited, but the door didn't budge. Worse yet, it slammed shut before you could even step inside. In that moment, it's easy to feel defeated, as though the universe has conspired against you. But what if that closed door wasn't a rejection, but a divine intervention? What if, in shutting that door, God was saving you from something you couldn't see? When a door closes firmly and unequivocally, it is often the loudest whisper from God. We live in a world that glorifies persistence and celebrates breaking down barriers. But sometimes, the greatest blessing is not in the doors we open, but in the ones that remain closed. A closed door forces us to pause, to reflect, and ultimately to redirect. It is not the end of the road, but a gentle detour, a signpost that says, not here, but somewhere better. Think of it this way: you're walking through a long corridor with countless doors on either side. Each door represents an opportunity, a choice, or a path. You try one, it's locked. Frustrated, you move to the next, but it too won't open. With each failed attempt, you feel your resolve weaken. But what you don't realize is that at the end of the corridor lies the door God has prepared for you. It's not locked, nor does it require you to force it open. It stands waiting, perfectly aligned with His purpose for your life. A firmly closed door is often a sign that you're trying to force your will over God's plan. It's human nature to cling to what we think is best for us, but our perspective is limited. We see only the present. God sees the full picture. That job you didn't get might have led you down a path of mediocrity, while He has a role designed to bring out your fullest potential. That relationship that ended in heartbreak might have saved you from years of pain, making space for the person who will truly honor your heart. What feels like a loss is often a lesson in trust. It's in these moments of perceived rejection that we are called to surrender our plans and lean into God's wisdom. His ways are higher than ours, His timing is perfect, and His vision is unclouded. When He closes a door, it's not to harm you but to guide you towards something far greater than you could imagine. Consider the story of a traveler who comes across a gate in a vast field. Beyond the gate lies a seemingly lush and inviting path. The traveler is eager to explore, but the gate is locked, and no matter how hard he tries, he cannot open it. Frustrated and weary, he turns away, his dreams of the path beyond shattered. But as he retraces his steps, he notices another path, a narrow, winding trail he had overlooked. Reluctantly, he follows it. To his surprise, this path leads him to a breathtaking view, far more magnificent than anything he could have imagined. The locked gate wasn't a denial, it was a redirection to something better. The same is true for the doors in our lives. When one closes, it is not a punishment but a pivot. It is God's way of saying, "Not this way, my child. I have something greater in store for you." Yet in our impatience, we often try to force doors open, refusing to accept that they were never meant for us. We waste time and energy banging on doors that were intentionally closed, blind to the fact that every closed door is an act of divine mercy. Even in the Bible, we see countless examples of God using closed doors to redirect His people. Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers, could have easily seen his circumstances as the ultimate rejection. Yet every closed door in his life, from being falsely accused to being imprisoned, was a stepping stone to the fulfillment of God's purpose. Without those closed doors, Joseph would never have risen to a position of power, ultimately saving countless lives during a famine. Similarly, when the Apostle Paul was forbidden by the Holy Spirit to preach in certain regions, it wasn't because his mission was wrong, it was because God had a different plan. Those closed doors led him to Macedonia, where his ministry would flourish and impact countless lives. When a door closes, the immediate reaction is often pain, confusion, or even anger. But instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is God protecting me from? What is He preparing me for?" A closed door is not the end. It's a sign that something better awaits. It's a reminder that your life is not governed by chance, but by a loving Creator who orchestrates every detail for your good. The next time you face a closed door, take a step back. Resist the urge to force it open, and instead seek God's guidance. Pray not for the door to open, but for the clarity to see the path He has prepared for you. Trust that the same God who closed that door is already opening another one that leads to joy, fulfillment, and purpose. An unshakable feeling of restlessness. There's a peculiar kind of unease that creeps into our lives, often without warning. It's not the kind of restlessness born from boredom or impatience, but something much deeper, and gnawing feeling in your spirit that whispers, "There's more for you than this." At first you may brush it off, attributing it to stress, fatigue, or a fleeting mood. But as days turn into weeks and the restlessness persists, you begin to wonder, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Restlessness is often one of the clearest signs that God is stirring something within you. It is His way of shaking you out of complacency, of calling you to a higher purpose that you've either ignored or have yet to discover. While it can be uncomfortable sometimes, even agonizing restlessness is not meant to torment you but to awaken you. It's like the gentle tug of a parent's hand, urging you to rise and move when you'd rather stay where you are. In the natural world, restlessness is a signal for change. Birds sense the coming of winter and migrate to warmer climates. Trees shed their leaves in preparation for new growth. Likewise, your spiritual restlessness signals that a season in your life is ending and a new one is about to begin. But here's the challenge: we often resist this feeling because change requires courage. It demands that we leave behind what is familiar, safe, and predictable. And yet it is in this very discomfort that God's voice becomes clearest. Have you ever noticed how dissatisfaction tends to creep into places you once found fulfilling? Maybe it's a job you once loved, a relationship you thought would last forever, or a routine that once brought you peace. Suddenly, these things no longer feel right. You wake up each day feeling as though something is missing, as though you're meant to be somewhere else, doing something more. This restlessness is not a curse, it's a calling. It's God's way of redirecting you toward the path He has set for you. The Bible is full of stories of restlessness leading to purpose. Think of Abraham, who was called to leave everything he knew: his home, his family, his comfort, for a land he had never seen. Imagine the restlessness he must have felt before that call. He could have ignored it, content to live out his days in familiar surroundings. But God stirred his spirit, and in his obedience, Abraham became the father of nations. His restlessness was the catalyst for a destiny far greater than he could have envisioned. Or consider Moses, who grew up in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by wealth and privilege. Yet deep within him, there was a restlessness he couldn't ignore, a sense that he didn't belong there, that his life was meant for something more. That restlessness eventually led him to leave Egypt, encounter God at the burning bush, and lead an entire nation to freedom. Without that initial feeling of unease, Moses might have remained in the palace, living a life of comfort but missing his true calling. In your own life, restlessness might manifest in subtle ways: a persistent thought that won't leave your mind, a growing dissatisfaction with your current circumstances, or an inexplicable yearning for change. You might feel torn, wanting to stay in the safety of what you know, but unable to shake the feeling that there's something more out there for you. This inner conflict is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of divine movement. But how do you respond to this restlessness? The first step is to listen. Instead of suppressing or ignoring it, sit with it. Pray for clarity, asking God to reveal what this feeling is pointing toward. Sometimes He will answer with clear direction, a new opportunity, a chance meeting, or a door that opens unexpectedly. Other times the answer may come in the form of continued unease, nudging you to keep searching until you find the path He has laid out for you. Restlessness often comes with a sense of urgency, but it's important to remember that God's timing is perfect. You may feel ready to act immediately, but His plans unfold according to His schedule, not yours. Trust that the restlessness you feel is part of a larger process, one that requires patience, faith, and perseverance. It's also crucial to distinguish between restlessness that comes from God and restlessness born of fear or comparison. The former inspires hope and growth, while the latter breeds anxiety and self-doubt. If your restlessness is accompanied by a sense of peace, even in the midst of uncertainty, it's likely that God is at work. If it feels chaotic and overwhelming, take a step back and seek His guidance through prayer and reflection. Restlessness can feel isolating, especially when others don't understand what you're going through. You might hear well-meaning advice to settle down or be content with what you have. But remember, contentment and complacency are not the same. Contentment is finding joy in the present while remaining open to God's future plans. Complacency, on the other hand, is settling for less than what you were created for. God did not design you to live a life of stagnation. He created you to grow, to evolve, and to fulfill a purpose that only you can accomplish. Restlessness is His way of preparing you for the next chapter of that purpose. It is the bridge between where you are and where He wants you to be. As you navigate this feeling, take comfort in knowing that restlessness is a sign of God's presence, not His absence. He is moving in your life, stirring your heart, and paving the way for something greater. Your task is to trust Him, to follow where He leads, and to embrace the journey even when you can't see the destination. Let the restlessness inspire you, not discourage you. It is proof that God is not finished with you yet. people who enter or exit your life unexpectedly. Life is a tapestry woven with relationships, some lasting a lifetime, others fleeting moments that leave an indelible mark. There are times when certain people enter your life as if guided by an unseen hand, bringing with them lessons, blessings, or challenges that shape who you are. And just as suddenly, there are times when people leave, often without explanation, leaving you grappling with questions, doubts, or even pain. What if I told you that these comings and goings are not random? They are often signs of divine orchestration, a reflection of God's guiding hand in your life. Have you ever met someone who seemed to appear at just the right moment? Perhaps it was a mentor who gave you wisdom you didn't know you needed, a friend who stood by you in a difficult season, or even a stranger whose words resonated deeply with your spirit. These encounters are not coincidences. They are divine appointments, moments where God uses others to guide, comfort, or challenge you in ways that align with His purpose for your life. On the flip side, there are times when relationships you thought would last forever come to an end. A close friend drifts away, a partner leaves, or a family bond becomes strained. These moments can feel like rejection or loss, but often they are God's way of removing what no longer serves you. Just as a gardener prunes a tree to encourage healthy growth, God sometimes prunes relationships to prepare you for the next season of your life. But why does God allow people to come and go so unexpectedly? The answer lies in His purpose for your life. God sees what you cannot. He knows which relationships will propel you forward and which ones will hold you back. He understands that some people are meant to walk with you for a season, while others are meant to journey with you for a lifetime. Clinging to a relationship that has reached its divine conclusion can hinder your growth and block the blessings God has in store for you. When people enter your life unexpectedly, they often carry a specific purpose. They may bring encouragement in a time of despair, challenge you to grow beyond your limits, or provide clarity when you're facing a difficult decision. Their presence is a reminder that God works through people to fulfill His plans. These individuals may not always come in the form you expect. Sometimes they may challenge your beliefs, test your patience, or even provoke conflict. Yet these interactions are often the ones that teach the most profound lessons and lead to the greatest growth. Consider the story of Ruth and Naomi in the Bible. Ruth entered Naomi's life at a time of great loss and uncertainty. While Naomi might have felt abandoned by others, Ruth's unwavering loyalty was a testament to God's provision. Through their relationship, God orchestrated a plan that would not only restore their lives but also fulfill His greater purpose through the lineage of David. Ruth's unexpected entrance into Naomi's life was no accident. It was a divine appointment that changed the course of history. Likewise, when people exit your life, it's important to trust that their departure serves a purpose. This doesn't mean their presence was insignificant. Rather, it means their role in your story has been fulfilled. Clinging to what God has removed can prevent you from embracing the new opportunities He is bringing your way. It's natural to grieve the loss of a relationship, but remember that God's plans are always for your good, even when they involve painful transitions. One of the most challenging aspects of this process is learning to discern the difference between relationships that are meant to endure and those that are meant to end. This requires wisdom, humility, and a deep connection with God. Through prayer and reflection, you can begin to see His hand at work in your relationships, guiding you toward what is best for your growth and purpose. Sometimes the exit of a person from your life creates space for someone new to enter. A mentor leaves and suddenly a new teacher appears. A friendship fades and a new connection blossoms. This isn't coincidence, it's God's way of ensuring that you have the right people around you for the season you're in. Trust that He knows who you need, even when you don't. There are also times when you are the one called to exit someone else's life. Perhaps you feel a growing sense of restlessness in a relationship, a nudge to move on, or an inner conviction that your time in that person's life has come to an end. These moments require courage and faith, as letting go is never easy. Yet by obeying God's promptings, you allow Him to work in both your life and the life of the other person in ways that you may not understand in the moment. It's important to recognize that not every person who enters your life is sent by God, and not every exit is orchestrated by Him. This is where discernment becomes crucial. Pray for wisdom to identify relationships that align with His purpose, and for the strength to release those that do not. Trust that God will make it clear, often through the fruit that these relationships bear. Are they drawing you closer to Him or pulling you away? Are they encouraging your growth or keeping you stagnant? When you reflect on the people who have entered and exited your life, you begin to see the fingerprints of God in every interaction. The friend who offered a listening ear during a storm, the mentor who challenged you to reach higher, the partner who walked away. Making space for healing and growth, each one played a role in the tapestry of your journey. Ultimately, the people who come and go in your life are not just characters in your story, they are instruments of God's will. Their presence and absence are reminders that you are never navigating life alone. Even when relationships shift, God remains constant, weaving together a narrative that is richer, deeper, and more beautiful than you could ever imagine. Challenges that push you to grow. It's a truth we often resist. Challenges are the fertile soil in which growth takes root. No one enjoys hardship. No one actively seeks out struggle. Yet it is through trials that we are refined, stretched, and prepared for the purpose God has placed within us. Challenges are not arbitrary. They are intentional, tailored to your unique path and potential. They are, quite often, one of the clearest signs that God is guiding you. At first glance, challenges might seem like obstacles, as though they're barriers keeping you from the life you desire. But what if those very challenges were the bridge to something greater? What if the difficulty you're facing today is the mechanism by which God is equipping you for the blessings of tomorrow? The truth is, God rarely works in ways that are comfortable. Comfort breeds complacency, and complacency is the enemy of growth. When He introduces challenges into your life, it's not to harm you, but to build you, to transform you into the person you are meant to become. Consider how muscles grow. To strengthen and expand, they must first experience resistance. Without resistance, there is no growth. The same principle applies to your spiritual, emotional, and even mental development. The challenges you face act as resistance, forcing you to push beyond your limits, to rely on strength you didn't know you had, and ultimately to discover the resilience and faith that lie dormant within you. Take a moment to reflect on some of the most difficult seasons in your life. Perhaps it was the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, or a dream that didn't come to fruition. In the moment, it likely felt overwhelming, as though the ground had been pulled out from under you. But now, looking back, can you see how those challenges shaped you? Can you see how they taught you lessons you might never have learned otherwise? God uses challenges to refine us, much like gold is refined in fire. The heat may be intense, but it burns away impurities, leaving behind something precious and enduring. The Bible is filled with examples of God using challenges to prepare His people for their calling. Think of David, a shepherd boy anointed to be king. Before he could sit on the throne, he faced years of trials, fighting Goliath, fleeing from Saul, and enduring countless hardships. Each challenge was a step in his preparation, molding him into a leader capable of fulfilling his divine purpose. Without those trials, David might never have become the man after God's own heart. Or consider the Israelites who wandered in the wilderness for 40 years before entering the promised land. That period of wandering wasn't a punishment, it was a season of growth. Through challenges like hunger, thirst, and battles with enemies, they learned to rely on God, to trust in His provision, and to follow His guidance. The wilderness was their training ground, just as your challenges are yours. One of the most powerful aspects of challenges is that they reveal who you truly are. When everything is going well, it's easy to feel strong, faithful, and grounded. But it's in the midst of trials that your character is tested. Do you give up, or do you press forward? Do you lean on God, or do you try to carry the burden alone? Challenges strip away the superficial, leaving you face to face with your true self. And in that vulnerable state, God works to rebuild you into someone stronger, wiser, and more aligned with His will. Challenges also teach us to depend on God. When life is easy, we often fall into the trap of self-reliance, believing we can handle everything on our own. But when the storm comes, we are reminded of our limitations. It's in those moments of weakness that we are most open to God's strength. As Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 12:9, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Challenges are an invitation to surrender not to the problem, but to the one who has the power to overcome it. Another purpose of challenges is to shift our perspective. When life is smooth, we often become fixated on temporary things, material success, recognition, or comfort. But challenges have a way of redirecting our focus to what truly matters: faith, character, and purpose. They remind us that this life is not about avoiding discomfort, but about fulfilling the mission God has placed before us. Challenges refine our priorities, helping us see what is eternal and letting go of what is fleeting. Challenges also have a ripple effect. Your perseverance through trials doesn't just benefit you, it inspires those around you. When others see you standing firm in the face of adversity, it becomes a testimony of God's faithfulness. Your story of overcoming may be the encouragement someone else needs to keep going. In this way, challenges not only grow you but also equip you to serve others. It's important to note that not all challenges are of the same magnitude. Some may feel like small inconveniences, while others may shake you to your core. Regardless of their size, every challenge carries the potential for growth if you approach it with faith and perseverance. The key is to ask, what is God trying to teach me through this, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? While challenges are never easy, they are necessary. They are the tools God uses to prepare you for the blessings He has in store. They strip away what is unnecessary, strengthen what is weak, and build what is missing. And though you may not see it in the moment, every challenge you face is part of a greater plan, a plan designed for your good and His glory. An overwhelming sense of peace amid chaos. Peace is one of the most profound gifts God gives to those who trust Him. But this peace is not the kind that comes from circumstances aligning perfectly or life going according to plan. No, this is a peace that exists in the eye of the storm, a calm that defies logic when everything around you seems to be falling apart. If you've ever experienced this unshakable serenity, even in the midst of chaos, you've encountered one of the clearest signs that God is guiding you. At first, it might feel confusing. You're walking through a season of turmoil, perhaps a loss, a conflict, or a decision with no clear answers, yet somehow you're not overwhelmed. The anxiety that you expected to crush you isn't there. Instead, there's a quiet assurance in your heart that says, everything will be okay. That's not denial or wishful thinking, it's the supernatural peace of God. A peace that Scripture describes as surpassing all understanding, Philippians 4:7. This kind of peace is not something you can manufacture on your own. It doesn't come from positive thinking, distractions, or sheer willpower. It comes directly from God, often as a way of reminding you that He is in control, even when life feels out of control. It's as if He's whispering to your soul, I've got this. Trust me. When God gives you peace amid chaos, it's a sign that you're walking in His will, even if the path ahead isn't clear. This peace is His way of assuring you that you are exactly where you need to be, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. It's a gentle reminder that His plans are higher than yours, and His ways are beyond human comprehension. I think of Jesus calming the storm while His disciples panicked. The winds were howling, the waves crashing, and the boat was filling with water. To the disciples it seemed like the end. Yet Jesus stood and spoke 3 simple words: peace, be still. Instantly the chaos ceased. What's more remarkable is that while the storm raged, Jesus was asleep in the boat, completely unshaken. His peace wasn't just about silencing the storm, it was a reflection of His absolute trust in God's sovereignty. In our lives, the storms often look different, but feel just as overwhelming: financial struggles, health scares, broken relationships, or uncertain futures. And while we might not hear Jesus physically speaking peace, be still we can experience the same calm when we surrender the chaos to Him. His peace doesn't necessarily change our circumstances immediately, but it changes us within those circumstances. What does this peace look like practically? It might manifest as a clarity of thought when you're faced with a difficult decision. It could be the ability to sleep soundly, even when the weight of the world seems to rest on your shoulders. It's the confidence to take the next step, even when you can't see the full path. It's the absence of fear, even when fear seems like the logical response. This peace often appears when you least expect it. You may be in the middle of a storm, convinced that everything is spiraling out of control, and then suddenly you feel a calmness that you can't explain. That's God stepping in to remind you that He hasn't left your side. This peace is His signature, a mark of His presence in your life. One of the reasons this peace is so powerful is that it shifts your focus. When life feels chaotic, our natural inclination is to focus on the problems, the storm, the waves, the wind. But God's peace lifts your eyes above the chaos and fixes them on Him. It's a gentle nudge that says, "Stop looking at the storm and start looking at me." This peace also serves as a guide. There are moments when you're faced with multiple options, and each one seems equally viable or equally impossible. How do you choose? Often the path God wants you to take will be the one that brings peace. It may not be the easiest or the most logical choice, but it will feel right in your spirit. Conversely, a lack of peace can be a sign that you're heading in the wrong direction. It's important to recognize that this peace doesn't mean you won't feel emotions like sadness, frustration, or even fear. It's not about suppressing your humanity. Rather, it's about knowing that, despite those emotions, you are held by a God who is bigger than your circumstances. His peace is the anchor that keeps you steady when the waves threaten to pull you under. This peace also acts as a testimony. When others see you walking through trials with a calmness that doesn't make sense, it becomes a powerful witness to God's presence in your life. They may not understand it, but they'll notice it. And in noticing, they might begin to wonder about the source of your strength, opening the door for you to share the hope you found. But how do you cultivate this peace? The answer lies in surrender. Peace comes when you release your grip on the things you can't control and place them in God's hands. It comes when you stop trying to solve every problem on your own and instead trust that God is already at work. It's not about having all the answers, it's about trusting the one who does. Prayer is another key to experiencing this peace. When you pour out your worries, fears, and doubts to God, you make room for His peace to fill your heart. As it says in Philippians 4:6-7, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." An overwhelming sense of peace amid chaos is not just a fleeting feeling, it's a profound sign that God is actively working in your life. It's His way of reminding you that, no matter how tumultuous the storm, you are never navigating it alone. It's a reassurance that His plans for you are good, even when the world feels anything but. Providential timing. Timing is everything, or so the saying goes. But in the realm of faith, timing is not just about chance or luck, it's about divine orchestration. Providential timing is one of the clearest signs that God is guiding you, weaving the threads of your life into a masterpiece only He can see. It's those moments when something happens at just the right time, in just the right way, that you know it couldn't possibly be coincidence. It's the job offer that comes when you've reached the end of your financial rope, the unexpected opportunity that aligns perfectly with a decision you've been wrestling with, or the conversation that answers a question you've been asking in your heart. Providential timing is God's way of reminding you that He is in control, that He sees the beginning, middle, and end of your story, and that He is actively working behind the scenes for your good. These moments are not random, they are intentional, carefully planned, and deeply personal. Yet they often require patience, trust, and a willingness to wait on God's perfect timing, even when it feels like time is running out. Think about the moments in your life when everything seemed to fall into place in a way you couldn't have planned. Perhaps you were running late for a meeting, only to encounter someone who would later play a pivotal role in your journey. Or maybe you felt like you missed an opportunity, only to have a better one come along at precisely the right moment. These aren't coincidences, they are divine appointments. One of the most profound examples of providential timing in the Bible is the story of Esther. A Jewish woman living in Persia, Esther likely never imagined herself as queen. Yet through a series of seemingly unrelated events, she found herself in a position to save her people from destruction. When her uncle Mordecai urged her to speak to the king on behalf of the Jewish people, he said, "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Esther 4:14. Esther's story is a testament to the fact that God's timing is never accidental, it is always purposeful. But what makes providential timing so powerful is that it often works in ways we don't understand until much later. While we're in the middle of waiting, it can feel as though God is silent, as though nothing is happening. But in reality, He is aligning circumstances, preparing people, and setting the stage for His plan to unfold. Our perspective is limited, we see only a fragment of the picture. God, however, sees the whole masterpiece. Waiting for God's timing is one of the most challenging aspects of faith. We live in a world that values instant gratification, where waiting feels like wasting. But God's timing is never rushed, and it's never late. He knows when you're ready, and He knows when the circumstances are ready. Trusting in His timing requires surrendering your need for control and believing that He is working for your good even when you can't see it. One of the most beautiful aspects of providential timing is how it often intertwines our stories with the stories of others. God's plans are not just about you, they are about how your life fits into His greater purpose. When you encounter someone at just the right moment, it's not just about what they bring to your life, it's also about what you bring to theirs. God uses these moments to connect lives, fulfill purposes, and glorify His name. For example, think about the story of Joseph in the Bible. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and falsely accused, Joseph endured years of hardship and waiting. Yet through it all, God was positioning him to save an entire nation from famine. When Joseph's brothers came to Egypt seeking food, they had no idea that the man standing before them, the one who held their fate in his hands, was the very brother they had wronged. Joseph's journey is a powerful reminder that God's timing often includes seasons of preparation, even when those seasons are difficult. In your own life, you may find yourself in a season of waiting or wondering why certain doors have remained closed. But know this, God is never idle. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, He is working. He is preparing you, refining you, and aligning circumstances for the perfect moment. What may seem like a delay to you is often a part of His divine design. Providential timing also teaches us to trust God in the unknown. There will be moments when things don't make sense, when you're tempted to take matters into your own hands or rush ahead. But every time you choose to wait on God, you're affirming your faith in His wisdom and His plan. You're saying, "God, I trust that you know what's best for me, even when I don't understand." It's also important to recognize that providential timing doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes God's perfect moment might come wrapped in inconvenience or even hardship. It might require stepping out in faith or making a difficult decision. But even in those moments, His peace accompanies His timing, assuring you that you are exactly where you need to be. Perhaps the greatest gift of providential timing is the way it reveals God's intimate care for you. He knows the desires of your heart, the fears that keep you up at night, and the dreams you're too afraid to speak aloud. When His timing aligns with your deepest needs, it's a reminder that you are seen, known, and loved by the Creator of the universe. It's His way of saying, "I haven't forgotten you. I'm working everything out for your good." Providential timing is not about perfection or predictability, it's about trust and surrender. It's about believing that God's plans are better than your own, even when you can't see the full picture. And when those moments of divine alignment happen, when everything comes together in a way you couldn't have orchestrated, you'll look back and see His fingerprints all over your story. A quiet voice within that urges you forward. Amid the noise and chaos of life, there's a subtle voice that speaks to you not in the thunder or the earthquake, but in the stillness of your heart. It's not loud, nor is it demanding, yet it carries a weight that cannot be ignored. This quiet voice often whispers when you're uncertain, nudging you toward decisions you're hesitant to make or paths you're unsure of walking. It's a voice that speaks of courage, of faith, and of stepping out into the unknown. This inner voice is one of the clearest signs that God is guiding you, urging you forward even when fear, doubt, or the opinions of others try to hold you back. This voice is unlike any other. It doesn't shout over the noise, nor does it demand your attention. Instead, it gently calls to you, persistent yet patient, waiting for you to listen. It often emerges in moments of stillness when you're alone with your thoughts, when you're seeking answers in prayer, or when life forces you to pause and reflect. In those moments, the voice is unmistakable. It doesn't come from your own fears or desires, but feels as though it originates from a place far beyond you. It carries with it a sense of peace and conviction that defies logic or explanation. Many people describe this voice as prompting a sense of knowing that they need to take a certain step, make a specific decision, or trust in a direction that doesn't yet make sense. It might be a sudden urge to reach out to someone, a thought that keeps resurfacing, or a quiet but unshakable conviction that you are being called to something greater. This voice doesn't always provide all the answers up front. Instead, it invites you to take the first step in faith, trusting that God will reveal the rest of the journey as you go. Think of the story of Elijah in the Bible. After a dramatic showdown with the prophets of Baal, Elijah found himself fleeing into the wilderness, overwhelmed and exhausted. He sought refuge in a cave, desperate for a sign from God. And God came, but not in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire. Instead, He came in a gentle whisper, speaking directly to Elijah's heart. This moment reminds us that God's guidance often comes in subtle, quiet ways, requiring us to tune out the noise of the world to truly hear Him. In your own life, this quiet voice may prompt you to step out of your comfort zone. It might urge you to pursue a dream that feels impossible, or to take a leap of faith that seems illogical to those around you. It's the voice that tells you to keep going when you feel like giving up, or to wait patiently when every part of you wants to act. It's the voice that reassures you when fear tries to paralyze you, saying, "You are not alone. I am with you." One of the most remarkable aspects of this voice is its consistency. While circumstances may change and emotions may fluctuate, the voice remains steady. It doesn't waver, nor does it contradict itself. It aligns with God's character, always pointing you toward what is true, noble, and good. If you're ever unsure whether this inner prompting is from God, ask yourself, does it encourage you to trust Him more? Does it align with His word? Does it lead to peace, even if the path ahead seems uncertain? If the answer is yes, then it's likely the quiet voice of God guiding you. Listening to this voice requires a posture of openness and humility. In a world that values loudness and certainty, it takes courage to trust in something so subtle. Yet it is in the quiet that God often speaks most clearly. The more you tune your heart to listen, the more attuned you become to His guidance. This doesn't mean you'll always hear perfectly. There will be times when you doubt or question. But God's voice is persistent, and He will continue to speak until you are ready to listen. This voice also has a way of pushing you beyond your limitations. It often calls you to places that require more faith, more trust, and more reliance on God than you thought you were capable of. It's the voice that says you can do this, even when every logical part of you says otherwise. It's the voice that reminds you of who you are and whose you are, grounding you in your identity as a child of God. Sometimes, this voice doesn't urge you to act but to pause. It might tell you to wait, to be still, or to let go of something you're clinging to. These moments can be the hardest to obey because they go against our natural desire for control. Yet it is in these moments of stillness that God often does his greatest work, shaping you for what lies ahead. There will also be times when this voice calls you to do something that others don't understand. Friends and family may question your choices, or society may label your decisions as foolish. But God's voice doesn't seek the approval of the world, it seeks your obedience. Following it requires faith, courage, and a willingness to trust that God's ways are higher than ours. This quiet voice is not just a sign of God's guidance, it is a reflection of his presence in your life. It is his way of reminding you that he is not distant but intimately involved in every aspect of your journey. When you feel lost or uncertain, this voice becomes your compass, pointing you back to the path he has laid out for you. Trusting this voice doesn't mean the journey will be easy. There will be moments of doubt, struggle, and fear. But each time you choose to listen, each time you take a step in faith, you draw closer to the purpose God has for you. And as you walk this path, you'll begin to see how every whisper, every nudge, and every quiet prompting was part of a greater plan, a plan designed not only for your good but for his glory. Life often feels like a puzzle, with pieces scattered across time and space, each one seemingly unrelated to the others. We stumble through seasons of confusion, doubt, and waiting, wondering if God is truly there, if he's truly guiding us. But when we pause to reflect, when we look back on the paths we've walked, the doors that closed, the voices that whispered, and the peace that sustained us, we begin to see his hand in everything. We begin to understand that he has been orchestrating our lives all along, weaving a story far greater than we could ever imagine. The signs of God's guidance aren't always dramatic. They don't always come with lightning bolts or booming voices. Often they come in the form of closed doors, unshakable restlessness, providential encounters, or a quiet inner voice urging us forward. They are found in the peace that defies chaos, the challenges that shape us, and the moments of perfect timing that remind us we are not forgotten. Each of these signs is a reminder that God is not distant or uninvolved. He is deeply present, working in ways we cannot always see or understand. What makes these signs so extraordinary is their personal nature. They are tailored specifically to you, to your story, to your journey. They are God's way of speaking to your heart, of drawing you closer to him, of assuring you that no matter how uncertain life may feel, he is in control. He sees the full picture, and every step, every detour, every delay is part of his perfect plan. So the next time you feel lost, remember to look for the signs. Pay attention to the doors that close, the people who come and go, the challenges that push you, and the peace that sustains you. Listen for the quiet voice within, and trust in the providence of God's timing. These signs are his way of saying, I'm with you. I'm guiding you. Keep moving forward. You may not always understand the path he's leading you on, but you can trust the one who walks beside you. His plans are always for your good, his guidance is always faithful, and his love for you is unshakable. Wherever you are, whatever season you're in, take heart. You are never navigating life alone. God is with you, guiding you every step of the way. Trust him, and let his signs illuminate the road ahead.